Mill players are human trash. Oh, we have a salty loser to look at in today's video. We all have decks that we love to hate, and Mill is that for many players. There is something about the act of removing cards from the library and putting them into the graveyard that makes a lot of casual players incredibly frustrated, irrationally angry. And we're going to look at one of those players today. Now, this isn't quite the reacting to the unhinged cheater video that I did a little while back, because this person is a friend of the one James, who is a online content creator in the Magic Sphere, and he got permission to share their angry rant in a private message on Twitter, and people enjoyed it. So to be clear, the person raging here is raging in a private DM, and we've all done that, right? We all get hyperbolic with friends, and we all over-exaggerate. I'm pretty sure I've trash-talked merfolk or elves back in the day after losing out to a top 8 of a modern event because they used to smash me when I played Death and Taxes regularly. We've all done it. But the reason I thought it'd be good to go through this is A, it's pretty funny, but B, it also opens up some conversations around why people react so adversely to Mill, and why some people think other decks are lesser, not as good as the stuff that they like to play. All that and more in today's video. But first, if you're looking to buy a single or sealed product or pre-order anything from Dragonstorms of Tarkir in the North Americas, you can do so from CoolStuffInc.com. Use the code Kenobi at checkout and you'll get 5% off your order, and it helps support the show. But if you're in good old Europe, you can do the same from magicmadhouse.co.uk. Magic Madhouse have Magic the Gathering cards, Pokemon cards, Lorcana, Warhammer, you name it, they've got it. They've got an incredible, extensive stock. And if you use the code on screen right now, you can get 5% off your order, and it helps to support the show. Big shout out to my sponsors for keeping me doing what I'm doing. So let's read this salt, shall we? Mill players are human trash. I will not shake their hand after a match. I will not let them take back things if they make a mistake. I will not smile in the direction unless I beat them, and in that case I will laugh at them. I'll tell them that their deck is trash if they ask my opinion, and that it gets beaten by bulk rares. I will not say a word for them after the match. I will do everything in my possible, I think he means power here, but you know, when you're in the middle of the rage, you're gonna get things wrong, right? Everything in my possible to make their lives miserable in my match with them. I hate playing against Mill. I hate Mill as a deck. If you play Mill, you should sell it. If you know a person who plays Mill, tell them to sell it. If your local has a Mill player, board in hate for them. Mill players should enjoy nothing in their lives, and if the only time they are allowed to be happy is when they finally sell that deck. So I think what happened here, if you read around it, looking at the comments and other people responding, is that they lost to a Mill player. Jane went on to continue the message exchange and share a bit more with us. I think James's name is James, but because they're called the one Jame, I only call them Jame. Thanks, bro. Some scumbag just took my chances at an X3 in the 10k. He wanted to prove himself and let his wife know he was winning. He's a good person. Fuck, the gig is up. This rager actually liked their opponent. Anyway, carrying on. He had Field of Ruin, which put me off Emrakul in game 3 to win. I hate that deck and I hope to never see it again. But if I do see it in RCQ before next modern RCQs, I will put my Kozilek into the deck and I will mill it. And then they'll already have burned their consigned to memory because Mill players are trash, because nobody wants to playtest with them, so they have zero experience about real decks. It's funny they said bulk rares earlier beat Mill, and then they're talking about Kozilek, the one that shuffles back in, which at time of recording, without looking, I'm going to hazard a guess, is like $30 or $40. Yeah, real bulk, buddy. This is what Mill players, and Egg players, and Lantern Control players always do. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's a bit out of order. Comparing Mill players to Lantern Control players, that's mean. That's out of line, dude. You can rage about Mill players all you want, but I draw the line at comparing them to the actual human scum of the game. Lantern Control players. Their reaction to normal people recoiling at disgust from their gimmick, trash, skillless decks makes them fill with glee instead of shame. To be fair, I get a kick out of people getting smashed when I play tier 3 decks like D&T. There is a perverse glee in that. They're correct in that statement. Instead of recoiling from the hideous abomination they've become, they instead pinch their nipples with joy. Oh god, I'm getting really called out here. And run around town naked and unashamed of their filthy deck choices. Anytime they're able to fling mud in the face of any normal person, Boros, Breach, Eldrazi, Blink, Meta Enjoyers, or people who aren't freaks, they smile, bend over, and spread their ass to show the victims where their deck came from. Okay, look, this is poetic and pretty funny, the idea that this deck came fully formed out of someone's spread, open winking anus. Absolutely. But calling red white energy and Breach players and Eldrazi Blink players the normal people? Sure, if normal people play the most obnoxious shit from Modern Horizons. There's a funny, interesting point here about how we're looking at real decks versus non-real decks, and having a moral high ground versus the decks that they believe to be morally inferior. I would posit the suggestion that the people who are playing the fringe decks are not playing 20 plus cards from Modern Horizons, or 8 copies of Mox Opal or whatever, or opals, those people are of the moral high ground. Now, I'm not saying playing the best decks in the format makes you a bad person. I'm not actually making that moralistic judgment. I'm just pointing out that it's kind of fucked to take the moral high ground when you are playing the most oppressive, obviously good thing in the format. I'll talk more about that with Breach in a moment. These people are jokes. I would rather draw 9 rounds on day 1 just to say they ruined 9 people's vacations instead of play a real deck with honor. Like I said, I think it's more honorable not to play the Modern Horizons shit show that is Red White Energy, for example, just because I think playing the most power crept stuff is the only thing you could argue is not with honor. And even then, I think that's a push. They then go to say life gain beats burn, or one of the best decks is Soul Sisters or whatever. Look, basically, I'm not gonna carry on reading because fuck Soul Sisters too. Again, historically, it used to beat D&T, so I'm allowed to subtly rage about it like this person's doing. So obviously they're memeing, they're fucking about with their friend, and their friend thought it was funny, so they posted it online and it resonated with people. It's funny because basically it is the archetypal I lost to a thing and thus that thing is trash, unfun, obnoxious, unfair, needs to go. You know, whatever the term you want to use, the reality is it's because you lost to it. So let's talk about that bias for a moment, okay? The reason that I thought this was really good is A, it highlights the idea that other decks are worse than yours and why people say that, and B, the mill thing. We'll come back to mill. Simply put, if you're talking about a game, whether it be Magic the Gathering or Warhammer or any card game or tabletop game or even a video game, and people are saying something is cheesy, you know, like a Tower Rush in Warcraft 3, a Protoss turret rush in StarCraft 2, Zerg rushing in StarCraft 2. I played some StarCraft 2 last week, it was fun. I was bad at it, I won 1 out of 5 games, Roach Rush, baby. But if they're saying those things are cheesy or unfun or lame, same as like using remote mines in GoldenEye or kicking low over and over and over in Street Fighter or Tekken or whatever the thing may be. The reason they normally say it's unfun or obnoxious is when they lose to it. It is very, very rare, and it can happen, and that's kind of a separate conversation in a way, which we're going to come to in a second with Breach. But it's very, very rare that anyone criticizes those things as unfun, obnoxious, or bad for the game when they're beating them. In a sense, it's often an unchecked or implicit bias. So you aren't actually as good at the game as you think you are. You can't beat simple cheese strategies, things that are fast, things that like push the early game of something like StarCraft or Tekken, the attacking low or building turrets or whatever. You can't stop that because you haven't got the knowledge or know-how or ability to do so. In the same way, you don't know how to counterplay or sideboard against burn or mill. I think burn comes into this category quite heavily too. And very commonly combo decks too. Combo decks really have that complexity thing of like, they are difficult to interact with because you don't really understand them at first, and thus they feel cheesy or unfun. But the truth is, when you're smashing them, you'll laugh about them a little bit. You may still have a little bit of a haughty-taughty high horse moment about those decks because they're cheaper than yours, or you perceive them to be of a lower skill level, but you aren't usually saying they're unfun or shouldn't exist in the game. Now, of course, the original OP is just overreacting because they got knocked out of a tournament, and having frustrated feelings is absolutely valid, and they're manifesting it in a joke between friends, and that's fine. But it does speak to this conversation around decks being inferior. Burn or mill, for example. And the only people ever complaining about those decks usually are the people losing to them. The people with bad matchups who aren't willing to adjust or learn, and they want to find an outlet for their frustrations, and that is the opposing deck that they think is cheesy or lame. Now, there is this other added element that burn, for example, as one of these decks, and mill are linear strategies that look to go from like 0 to 20 or 0 to 16 in terms of mill with cards in bin. And there's an argument that like there's no back and forth, there's no interaction, it's not real magic. The thing is that real magic is often a turn of phrase used to create a value judgment again when you're down or behind or losing. It's very fucking rare for someone to take the win and beat some sort of niche strategy like mill and then say that's not real magic, because that's not true, is it? Milling and putting cards into the bin to the point that your opponent goes to draw a card and loses has been in the game since alpha. Millstone is an alpha card, right? Oh god, I should look that up before I started recording. I'm looking it up during the edit right now and putting it on screen. I'm pretty sure I'm right here. So if anything, this is magic as Richard Garfield intended. You're just being a bitch about it. But there is this moralistic element of like, my deck costs more than yours. My deck interacts more than yours when you're playing like a mid-range deck or something against, say, burn, mill, or I guess combo kind of fits into this too. However, when we look at mill specifically, even more so than burn, when you ask the question of who the beatdown is, who is doing the aggressive game plan versus the reactive game plan, mill will often take that like that route. Whilst mill plays a lot of cards that are essentially glorified provide burn spells, cards that don't do anything other than shorten your opponent's lifespan with things like Tasha's Hideous Laughter. The other side of the deck is Fatal Pushes and Drown in the Locks, and Surgical Extractions to interact with cards in the graveyard too, which is part of the mill plan, but ultimately is an interaction piece. What I'm trying to point out here is that mill is actually a control deck, and it often takes the controlling role in a matchup, and thus it's not the linear go-fast deck that some people want to claim it is. And of course there's the casual side of mill, where the cards in my bin are no longer accessible, but really, do I have to explain that? In essence, the cards in your bin do not fucking matter if there's cards in hand, cards in play, and cards still to be drawn in your library. If anything, things being milled into your bin gives you information about how many copies of a thing you can draw, so you can formulate your game plan around information that you wouldn't normally have. And even further to that, if you're a casual player who hates milling Commander, and you're not getting like milled like with an infinite combo that kills you instantly, just milled, I don't know, someone just casts Traumatize against you, for example. I've seen this cast at a table casually, and because someone thought it'd be funny, and the person who got Traumatized, untapped, they're living death, and just combo killed the table with the stuff in their bin. Because sometimes milling people, and by sometimes I mean most of the time, milling people in Commander is a bad idea. So many decks utilize that graveyard for delve, or to find things and shoot, or to reanimate, or to escape, or do any of that stuff. So don't, as a new player or a casual player watching this video or playing Magic, get upset about the things going to the graveyard. It's largely irrelevant. You can pretend that those cards in the graveyard were actually 17 cards down deep into your library and you'll never find them. If you're not playing actual shooters towards your end game plan, the fact that a card is no longer in your library and you can't draw it is no different to it not being the card you're drawing next turn. It's like Schrodinger's asset, if you will. But to that point of milling people unable their graveyards, or allowing them to, I don't know, Thassa's Oracle kill. One of the prominent decks in the format of Modern right now is Underworld Breach. It plays Thassa's Oracle itself, mills as one of its multiple game plans. It's a very hard deck to hate out, because as far as I understand it, it can do multiple things, winning with Tamiyos or winning with Thassa's Oracles. And the thing is, I'm actually less versed in this than I normally would be. I'm normally quite up to date of what's being played in Modern and Legacy, but I've kind of given up on Modern because of the power creep of Modern Horizons 3 and the scheduled ban situation, where this deck is oppressive, coming to that in a second, and they're just not banning it yet because they've got to ban it at a certain fucking time. So, to that note, I mentioned earlier that people normally only call things unfun or oppressive or whatever when they're losing to it. And sure, there's a lot of people saying that about Breach right now, but truth be told, even the Breach players are saying this deck is fucking stupid, and everyone knows it's going to catch a ban when the ban announcement comes around. For context, Charlotte, the event, the RC that this player lost to Mill player and caused this outpouring. That event finished with top 36, 20 of the top 36 decks, including 6 of the top 8, were Breach. In that 36, guess how many decks were Mill? 2, or was it 3? 3. I think it's a really funny little microcosm of Magic where people get really hit up of what's happening to them and they don't pay attention to the larger, wider picture. I know, again, this person was fucking around in the comments in the DMs with a friend, and that's absolutely fine and valid. But I just love this as a example of what a lot of Magic players are like. So long story short, Mill is actually viable right now. I think it's got a good matchup into both Amulet and into the Underworld Breach deck, or reasonable, should I say, matchups. Underworld Breach having a very low CMC for Tasha's Hideous Laughter to be good, and so does the Amulet deck once you surgical the Titans. Also, Amulet is one of those decks where if you are milling them, you're actually doing the thing where A, you can take away tutorable things like lands that are found with Primeval Titan, but B, if they're playing Shifting Woodlands, whatever it's called, this card here, this card can actually be enabled by the mill. So you've got this weird interaction where sometimes you're taking away tutorable targets and you can maneuver your game plan on both sides of the board because of that. But on the flip side, if they draw or tutor for Shifting Woodland, they can now enable that by becoming something else that's in the bin. Isn't Magic fascinating? Isn't Magic the greatest fucking game? So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Are you a dirty, filthy casual who gets upset by mill? Or are you a mega Chad like me who doesn't give a fuck? I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. I'll see you in the next one. Be good to one another. See you soon. I've really fucking butchered this outro. I feel like be good to one of us. See you soon. I'm still going. This is staying in the video. We are in the outro right now. You can go, but you can also awkwardly watch me try and grab a hold of this fucking outro, wrangle it like my dick, like a fire hose in the wind, pissing all up the wall. What we're talking about? Oh yeah, the end of the video.